Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along. This is Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. Now, today's show, we're going to be discussing why effective teamwork is vital to the success of every organisation. Let's face it, you're working with a team of people, a group of individuals. They all have their own ideas, they all have their own ideals as well, and also different methods and different methodologies of working. So how do you get access to all of that? How do you pull it all together? How do you get people working together successfully within an organisation to make your organisation successful and get them working as a team? Joining me in the studio today is Nick Fewings. He's the CEO of Engagement Works. Nick, it's lovely to have you with us today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Steve.
A fascinating concept. We've had a number of people that have come in and we've talked about leadership, we've talked about working together as a team. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about you. You used to be a bank manager.
Yes, well, not a bank manager, but I worked in the bank right from when I left school. I went into banking and did everything right throughout the branch networks. Started off, my first job was making cups of tea and coffee for 60 staff. And that's when I actually started to understand that we're all different. Mm-hmm. And so I progressed and moved throughout the southwest until eventually I got to worked in the regional office in the southwest in Exeter, and I worked for the regional director. And at that time I was still into facts and figures and data and profit and loss. And so then got headhunted to work in Barclays in Poole, where Barclays had their big finance function, and it was my first opportunity to lead a team.
But this is where you actually start to see that people are as individuals within an organisation, and by managing that team effort together and understanding the personalities and the way people are, actually allows you to be more effective. You went on to then do training after leaving the bank, so you've done that now for something like, 20 years nearly, isn't it?
Almost, yes.
Almost 20 years.
Yeah, a long time.
And you do a lot of public speaking as well. You're all over the world. You were talking about you were in Beijing just recently.
Yes. I've spoken at over 400 conferences, and predominantly about teamwork, but often about leadership and your own personal development.
When organisations approach you and they say, we'd like you to come and talk at our conference, or they invite you to come and do training, do you hear the same story repeatedly? Is it fundamentally the same problem that every business has, regardless of their size? People will come to you and you think, I've heard this before, so obviously that makes your job easier, but yes. Is it the same issues, the same problems repeating themselves? Yes,
very much so. It tends to be around communication and a better understanding of people. How can we work more collaboratively
Easy
together?
For you to say.
I know, yes, yeah. And that seems to be the recurring theme. Whether it's leadership conferences or project management conferences or just all staff conferences, there is a need for people to better understand each other and what makes you tick and why you get on with some people and other people you find difficult.
I mean, it is an issue, isn't it, with what you do? There are a lot of people out there. You've worked in an institution that is built around a management structure, and we were talking about the different kind of leaders that are out there at the moment. You know, there are some leaders who are aggressive, abrasive, and will manage on fear, and are very successful. Yes. And, you know, God rest his soul, Steve Jobs, for instance, was a frightening individual for people to deal with on a one-to-one basis. But yet, we're looking at one of the most successful organisations in the world. Are we going a bit soft, do you think? Do we just need someone that is a nasty piece of work but knows what he's doing? Or do we get more out of our people by having someone who's quite nice and everybody likes and knows what he's doing?
I think there's different styles. There's different styles of leadership, and you can be successful in different ways. Yes, Steve Jobs had a particular leadership style. If you look in the UK, there's Alan Sugar, who has got a totally different leadership style to Richard Branson. But I think with these people, what they do is they understand themselves extremely well, and they build teams around them with complementary styles to them, and they make that team work.
Well, you've said that you repeatedly hear the same message, and if you hear the same message on an ongoing basis, do you think there is a solution that can be applied to most businesses? So, for instance, our viewers that are watching today, they're watching this, they're thinking, actually, I can see there are issues with my leadership skills or my style within my business. Is there a Pandora's box that we can all open and go, actually, that will make an improvement on the way our business is working?
Certainly, I believe there is. Having worked with lots of teams over many years, I think there's two things that you need to know in a team. It's, first of all, who's in your team, what skills do different people have, and when I talk about skills, not just technical skills, but the behavioural skills that they have. And once you actually understand who's in your team, the second part of it, which a lot of organisations don't do, is measure how effectively those individuals are working together. And I think once you understand those two elements, that's when you can start to make things really happen and build a high-performing team.
Are people different? We often see this psychological. Is it psychological profile?
Yeah.
Yeah, profiling that we see, and people are divided in different groups. There are leaders, there are followers, there are people that will look at the detail, there are people that need to work with other people. Yeah. Is that true, or is it just a load of old bunkum?
No, it is true. I mean, it started off 2,500 years ago with Hippocrates, who was the first person to study human behaviour. And at a very top level, he identified 4 different types of people. And that was taken forward by a Swiss psychologist called Carl Jung, who died in the early 1960s. And he still identified at a top level those 4 different types of people based on 3 pairs of different behavioural preferences that we all have within us, but we use to varying degrees. And that's what makes us the unique individuals we are. And if somebody has got those similar behavioural characteristics to us, the old adage is, if you are like me, I like you. And we will get on well with those people. With the ones who are behaviourally different to us, those are the people that we'll often struggle with and will find they're difficult. And in the training that I do and in the conferences I speak at, I try to get people to change difficult to different, and also frustration with another person to be fascinated with them.
Is there does industry, I'm trying to think of the right question on this, but does industry try to shoehorn the techniques that you're showing, the things that you identify? Do organisations try to shoehorn that into their organisation to make what you say fit? Some will. I think the majority have good intentions with behavioural profiling, and they apply it extremely well. And those are the organisations that are going to make the most of it. But there are organisations that, yes, they don't use it as effectively as they should do. And that's where sometimes a lot of damage can be caused. If we identify our different traits and our team's different traits, what is the most that we can expect from it? What's the biggest reward as an organisation we can get from identifying it and, I hesitate using the word manipulate, but to use that information?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things is it reduces stress a great deal, because you can talk about a person's behaviours rather than pointing the finger at the individual. You can value and appreciate diversity a great deal more, recognising that different people have strengths in particular areas. So some people will be very good at the detail, the processes and procedures. They will spot a risk a mile off. Whereas you'll have others in the team that are totally behaviourally different to them, who are very creative, they're very upbeat and motivational. They see the big picture. You'll have others that will drive success and they will keep their eye on the goal and the objectives of the team. And then you'll have some other people that are fantastic at dealing with customers, and they will make sure that the team is on board and that we get consensus of opinion before driving things forward. And I think those teams that value and appreciate those differences and understand them well are the ones that will achieve greater success.
Is it at all levels, do you think? Is it the team members? Is it the leaders as well?
Yes, I mean, I work with leadership teams, project teams and operational teams. And at the end of the day, anywhere where there's collaboration between more than two people, you need to understand those two people because it's all about relationships. As the saying goes, people by people. So we need to understand each other.
Well, listen, what we're going to do, we're going to work our way through a whole number of different topics on today's programme. We're going to be looking at the importance of not only understanding who is in your team, which you kind of alluded to just then, but also how effectively they work together, the impact of behaviours on teamwork, getting the balance right between tasks and relationships. I mean, these are all fundamentals. And to a certain extent, we sometimes will sit back and we think to ourselves, well, we think we're probably doing this, and in fact, probably we're not doing this. I think it's all very easy for all of us to think that we are great leaders or we inspire people. But sometimes, there's a question I often ask people who come into the programme. I often say to them, particularly managing directors when they come on, I say, so what do you think people think of you? What are you called behind your back? What's your nickname with it? And it's this whole perception of how you are perceived. You may have one perception of how you're perceived and how you think you are managing, and other people may have a completely different other perception as well. And there is one thing I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you how some of the skills that we're talking about today can actually be used as well when it comes to, shall we say, presenting to our teams, and how we can motivate our teams by using some of the techniques. So hold that thought. All right.
Yeah, sure.
My guest on today's show is Nick Fewing, CEO of Engagement Works. It's going to be a great show. I love this whole psychology of things. There's some more to come from Nick in just a few moments' time here on this edition of Business Connections Live. Now, on last week's program, we talked to Derek Williams from the WOW Awards about the cost of not engaging with your employees. There seems to be a real train of thought going on at the moment. All the programs seem to be, there's a lot of leadership stuff that we're talking about at the moment. It seems to be becoming increasingly more and more important within industry and within businesses when it comes to how you do effectively lead your teams. More from, as I said, in just a few moments from Nick. But let's go back to last week's programme. As I said, Derek Williams from the WOW Awards was here. They recognise, of course, great engagement, great work from teams, from the employees who are out there in the field. Just in case you missed last week's edition of the programme, and to give you a bit of a tease of what happened on the show, if you did miss it, then here's Derek Williams from last week's edition of Business Connections Live. On today's show, we're going to be discussing the cost of not engaging with your employees. Well, joining me in the studio today is Derek Williams. He's from the WOW Awards. In fact, he's the founder of the WOW Awards.
Well, the WOW Awards is just a really simple process, and it's all about catching people doing things right. But it's an invitation to customers to say when they've had a great service experience. And I think very often for the people who are running businesses, their fear is that customers only ever want to complain. They're actually very, very enthusiastic about saying thank you if there is an easy way for them to do so. When this started, my idea was, what I wanted to do was to try and identify organisations that gave great service. But what customers started telling us about were the people that gave them great experiences. One of the very first organisations we worked with, they ran this for just 1 month. And they had 466 customers who said, thank you for giving me great service. So I think that customers have a much greater propensity to say thank you. Many of us as managers and leaders believe that the best way to encourage people is to offer them financial incentives. And what we've learned through this process is that it's almost exactly the opposite. Take away the financial incentives and just give people sincere recognition for doing a good job. But it really starts off with vision. Somebody has to have a vision for this organisation that others can buy into and support. But actually, some of the best leaders are the leaders that make themselves most vulnerable. They're the ones that say, look, I've got a problem. How can we get out of this? They're people that can rally a group to a cause. Now, he might not be perfect at everything that he does, but he's prepared to bring in strengths that complement his own and put together a team of people. But I think as well as the vision, there's the communication is obviously essential. If you can't communicate, you're in a business of communication. If you can't communicate your message, well, your message is pointless. Mm-hmm. And then I think it's really down to recognising people's efforts. So I think the power of recognition and a sincere thank you is much more powerful than we perhaps give credit for. And if our people feel engaged, then the productivity will come from that. If you ask customers to say, when have we done a good job for you? When has something gone well? Would you tell us? We want to be the best that we can be. They will tell you. Who are the people in back office that are also responsible for giving great service? It might be in logistics or accounting or personnel. So therefore, expand the system and allow people to nominate each other. So we're providing a service to our customers, whether that's a police force or a hospital or an insurance company, it really doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're receiving these testimonials, nominations, however you like to call them, and we're judging it using our own criteria and through what we feel are the eyes of the customer. Well, my name is Derek Williams. I started the WOW Awards programme. It was a simple idea. Every idea since that simple idea 20 years ago have actually come from working with great organisations. Organisations that have said, can we do this? Can we try that? So we now have a service that is just incredibly simple in its concept. It works incredibly well. We love what we do. What we bring to it is independence, we bring credibility, and probably most importantly, we make something that is important but not urgent work. So for our customers, every day of the week, every month of the year, we are receiving these stories from customers, we're judging those stories, and every month we're issuing certificates of recognition. It's all that we do. We're not trainers, we're not consultants, we're not mystery shoppers. We just make this work for our customers. So once again, I'm Derek Williams from the WOW Awards. If you want to contact us, reach out to us through our website, thewowawards.co.uk. We love what we do. We'd love to help you too.
Derek Williams from the WOW Awards about the cost of not engaging with your employees. And if you're sitting there at the moment thinking to yourself, you know, this is a great way, a programme just like this one, to engage with our employees. If you'd like more details about how you can have a show just like this one for your organisation, answer me this. Are you sending out newsletters at the moment? Are you bombarding your teams, your staff with emails? Wouldn't it be better to turn your readers into viewers and to talk directly to them in your own voice? To be sat there, maybe to be sitting where Nick is today, being, interviewed and talked to. If you'd like a program just like this one, why don't you get in contact with us here at Business Connections Live? It's dead easy to do. All you got to do is contact us by dropping us an email. The email address, of course, is studio@businessconnectionslive.com. Or if you wish, you can always pick the dog and bone up and give us a call on the telephone on 01784 256 777. It really is as easy as that. If you want to, you can also follow our stream of consciousness on Twitter at BCL Business TV. Listen, if it's good enough for the President of the US, then it's good enough for us to get our stream of consciousness out there as well. Don't forget as well, you can watch the programmes and leave comments too on our Facebook page. The program's going out, of course, every week on Facebook Live. But the best place to go to find out about all of this is to go to the website at businessconnectionslive.com. That is the place where over 200 hours of great programming information is there. Great advice for your business from a startup all the way through. It doesn't matter what you're looking for. If you're looking for sales technique, funding, the psychology of leadership, it's all there on the website. Just go to businessconnectionslive.com. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest in the studio today is Nick Fewings. He's the CEO of Engagement Works. We're talking about the psychology behind how to be better leaders and maybe also how to identify the best way to get the best out of your team who are working with you. Nick, we were talking just before we came on air and also just a moment or so ago that you've come across managers who use all the techniques that you use.
Yes.
And you were telling me about a CEO that stood up in front of his team. And by identifying the different types of personality he had in his team, he was able to deliver a keynote to his team that engaged everybody in the room.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, yeah. He knew himself extremely well, and out of these 4 behavioural types, he had a dominant one, which was a very caring, very values-driven leadership style, very open and coaching style. However, when he stood up to give a presentation which set out the new year and what the directorate was going to do in front of his 200 staff, within an hour he went through these 4 behavioural types to give his message across. So he started off with a strategy of what they were going to do, which products they were going to sell, which organisations that they were going to build relationships with to achieve the success that they wanted. And he then quite seamlessly switched to another style, which was a motivational, engaging style to say, and it's going to involve all of us, and it's going to be quite exciting. We're going to work with new clients, and we're going to build new project teams. And again, then he transitioned into a style where he talked about people coming out of their comfort zones and making sure that they had the appropriate training, the learning and develop to help them develop and grow as individuals. And he then summarised by putting up all the facts, figures and data that if the plan succeeded, this is what the financial outlook would look like. And that took him over an hour. And when I spoke to his staff at the coffee break, I spoke to a selection of his staff and I said, how do you find your leader, your director? And everyone came back and said they felt that he was the best director they'd ever had. So I just asked the question, so why? And each one came back and said, because he communicates in a way that meets our needs. So very, very powerful stuff.
It's very interesting because to do what he did, obviously he thought it through.
Yeah.
He knew exactly what he was doing. Let's define those character traits then. And the other question I'm going to ask after that is, can you self-identify what you are yourself? But let's go through the character traits that we're talking about here.
Sure.
This is based on, a lot of people may have heard about this or seen examples of it, but it's based around the colours.
Yes, there's it's a 4-colour model because 4 seems to be a number that resonates with our brains. Mm-hmm. Psychologically, we can capture bits of data that are 4. That's why you get a lot of 4-box models in leadership training and all sorts of training. And so it's based on Jungian psychology. And first of all, there's a split between those people who have a preference for being introverted. So they get their energy from within. They're very quiet, shy, reflective, thoughtful.
What colour is that?
Well, there's 2 colours associated with that. One is what is called earth green, and the other one is called cool blue.
Right.
On the other side of the coin, you've got those people who are more extroverted, so they get their energy off other people. And one of the colours that is associated with extroversion is fiery red, and the other colour is sunshine yellow. Now, to get to the 4, the fiery red is extroverted, and on top of that, the way in which fiery reds make decisions, They make decisions very, very logically. So they make decisions based on facts, data and information.
So that'll be our Linda that's here then?
Quite possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're the fiery reds, and they are very strategic, action orientated. They like ticks in the box, success, deliverables, and moving things forward at pace. So the other extroverts, which are the sunshine yellows, they're very much more motivational, upbeat, engaging. They come up with lots of ideas. They may not see those ideas through.
That'd be me then.
Quite possibly.
Yep.
Because they like verbal communication.
Yep.
Very sociable, very gregarious.
But don't like detail.
But don't like detail, no, especially written detail. So they're what we call, or Jung termed, they lead with extroverted feeling, because it's about relationships. Then the third group is what we call earth greens. And they're very calm, they're very quiet when they talk to you, they don't like to upset. They're great team players if they believe in what the team is trying to achieve. They're very value orientated, and they like to get consensus of opinion. And so they are introverted feelers. So the main thing is about relationships, but they go within themselves to actually think about how they're going to interact with other people. And then last but not least are the cool blues, the technical experts, the specialists, the seekers of knowledge, seekers of information. They dot the I's, they cross the T's, they see things through. They're very, very thorough in what they do, and they can spot risks. They can spot a risk a mile off, and they are called introverted thinkers. So they're more than happy to work by themselves for a long period of time in quiet situations.
Can people have a combination of the colours? Can they switch between them? Can you have someone who is a predominant yellow with a tendency to red?
Yes. What happens is in probably 60% of the population, we work with two behavioural styles, and the way I explain it sometimes is like we write. We either write with our left or right hand. One feels more comfortable than the other. And it's the same with behavioural styles. We'll have a behavioural style that feels more comfortable, we can use it more readily. However, like with writing, if we break our writing hand, when we first use our other hand, it feels a little bit awkward and difficult. But after a while, we get used to it and we can start to write more effectively. And it's the same with these behavioural styles, that the more you dip your toes using the different styles, the better you become. And those leaders that are great leaders, yes, we have all four within us, they are the ones who are able to adapt their styles more readily because they've practiced.
So where does the skill begin then? If I am a leader within an organisation, where is the skill important for me to start? Do I first of all identify what my team is made up of? Yeah. Then what do I do with that information? How do I go about it? Do I put people, because it just seems that you're pigeonholing people, aren't you? You're nearly siloing them to a certain extent. Or does it allow them to grow? Does it allow them to discover that maybe some of the skills that they didn't realise they had? Because people will have a natural starting point, won't they? Yes,
yes. And I mean, research has shown that behavioural differences actually start as soon as we're born. There's been some studies by doctors in Sweden that have actually identified parts of the brain that are either larger or smaller for those babies that turn into either a preference for introversion or preference for extroversion. But are we stuck with it? Is it nature or is it nurture? Can we change? It's a combination of both. Yes, we do change. Over the years I've changed. It doesn't happen overnight. It tends to be a gradual process. Because you said to me that you are and you see this with a lot of speakers that are out there. Yeah. You've got a persona, perhaps, that is one particular character, and the moment they walk off stage, there's another persona which is nearly like a completely different character. Yeah. Comedians, for instance, they're very funny on stage, manic depressives off stage. Very much so, and that links those terms, manic depressive, actually link back to the psychology of Jung. The depressive state is the psychologically damaged cool blue. So they go within themselves, but really badly. And the manic is the opposite behavioural style, which is the sunshine yellow. So we're there on a real high. And yes, some people, what you see is what you get. Other people, you have this different persona. And certainly it works for me. When I'm working with teams and also speaking at conferences, I need to be upbeat, lots of energy, lots of interaction to make sure that people are engaged for the 1.5 hours if I'm speaking at a conference. When I'm working with a team, it's going to be over a longer period of time. So I'm very extroverted. However, when I come off stage or I'm in my car, travelling back home, that's when I start to go within myself and think about the day, reflect on the day, so I become quite introverted, quite quiet. So I do balance those two, and it is like batteries, you need to recharge them over a period of time and be aware of your different styles and how to use them effectively.
I need you to have a think about this, because I need you to, as a leader then, how do we use that information? How do we first of all identify it in ourselves?
Yeah.
And then how do we identify it in the team that we're actually going to be talking to, and how we're going to motivate them? So they're the key things that in the next segment, that's what we're going to be talking about, how you can actually take that information that Nick is telling us about, how you can identify those different character traits in the team that is working around you, and then how do you benefit as a leader from identifying this and using it within the structure, the way you motivate your team. So that's what we're going to be talking about in just a few moments' time on this edition of Business Connections Live. My guest on the program today is Nick Fewings. He's the CEO of Engagement Works. We'll be going to his website very shortly to give you a little bit more. But if you've come across this whole colour coding of individuals' personalities before, then this will give you more of an insight into how it applies to people that are working around you and for you and with you within the organisation that you're currently working for right now. Still more to come on this edition of Business Connections Live. As I said, my guest is Nick Fewings, CEO of Engagement Works. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company as always. We're here every Monday at around about 12 o'clock. And tell you what we're going to do now. This one kind of fits in rather nicely. One of my favourite guests that we've had on the program, she was last on the 11th of January 2016, was the fabulous Kate Cook. She was on Business Connections Live 115. Corporate wellness for better work performance. Detox your diet for maximum performance at work. Switched on employers are starting to realise that one vital key to flourishing businesses is the health of their employees. If you're neglecting that within your organisation at the moment, perhaps you're missing a trick. Just to give you the key takeaways from the programme, here she is, the lovely Kate Cook from Business Connections Live.
Hello, I'm Kate Cook and I'm a corporate wellness specialist and also nutritionist by trade. And today I would like to give you 3 tips on how you can start making that evolution happen for you. Don't think about revolution, think about evolution. So the first tip I would say is about the structure. So go back and look at your lifestyle and how it's preventing you at the moment from being healthy, whatever that is. It could be around making boundaries at home, by going home on time. It could be about childcare. It could be about having more fun in your life at weekends and not working. And definitely around technology. Our brains are not designed to operate these technology machines all the time. And it has an impact on our nutrition because it takes away our micronutrients away from our kind of pot that we can access. So make a change around that, and how you do that is, and this isn't a product placement folks, but go to Paperchase and buy yourself a menu planner. It's £8 or thereabouts to buy yourself a menu planner from Paperchase. Then plan out what you're going to eat. Instead of that, getting home and looking in the fridge and finding nothing there, okay? And wondering who's nicked it. Dobby the house elf, has he been round? Nicked all your food? No, you didn't plan it. So that's the first thing. Second thing, get a nice hot meal, especially around this time of year. Look into having I've got a crock pot, but it's a slow cooker. You chop up the stuff. It takes you 5 seconds, and you've got 5 seconds. But you've got this beautiful, hot, wonderful steaming meal as you come in, and it's absolutely fabulous. So, and they're extremely cheap to operate. Dust it off if you've got it in your garage, you know, because it's been there since your wedding day. And the other thing is just eat organic. You know, if that's your one change, I would do that. Make it slow, start and taste the difference, and you will start making dynamic changes into how you start living your life. Thank you very much.
That's Kate Cook, of course, and if you want to go back, you can join Kate Cook on the website of businessconnectionslive.com. That is programme 115, Corporate Wellness for Better Work Performance. By the way, thousands of you are downloading the programme every month on iTunes. Can we thank you very much for that? But you can help us. What we'd like you to do is to leave a recommendation. What happens when people go to iTunes, they'll watch maybe one of the many programs on businesses. At the end of the program, what iTunes will actually do is it'll say, other people not only watch this program, but they also watched that one as well. And the algorithm that drives that recommendation is where you can help us out. All you got to do is go along to iTunes and leave us a review. It's dead easy to do. Go to your iTunes account, view the program in iTunes. That'll take you to this page. You'll see all the shows there, and you'll see a tab that says ratings and reviews. Just click on that. That'll take you to there, and then you can write your review. Leave a 5-star review. Tell us how great you think Nick is, by the way. Give him 5 stars, how the information you found useful within your organisation. By giving us that 5-star review on iTunes, it means more people will download the programme, and it will just grow the audience. The audience is really very interesting when we look at the statistics from it. America, China are two of the big audiences for the program, of course, along with the UK as well. If you can leave us a review on iTunes, we'd really appreciate it. So the moment the program's finished, or the moment you finish watching this one, go to iTunes, sign up, subscribe to the program, and watch us on a weekly basis. You can take us on the train, take us on the plane, you can take us anywhere you wish. You're watching Business Connections Live. My guest on today's show is Nick Fewings. He's the CEO of Engagement Works, cracking organisation. He's a corporate speaker. He does thousands of corporate speaking gigs. He also goes into organisations and he shows them the wrongs of their ways by identifying the proper character traits that they have within their teams and how to identify it and then to capitalise on those identifiable character traits. Realistically, how do you actually put this into work? How do you put this into action within the business?
Sure. I think the first thing you've got to do as a leader, or when you start to lead a team, as Stephen Covey says in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, you need to get the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. And sometimes that's down to behavioural personalities and also technical skills. So when I used to lead teams, one of the first things I did in the first few weeks of leading a team was to, if they hadn't been already, get them behaviourally profiled. And there's loads of profiling tools out on the market, and all I say to organisations is, if you're going to use a profiling tool, make sure it's one that's recognised by the British Psychological Society, so it's got the tick in the box that it's actually valid and useful and accurate. And the second thing to do then is to make sure that it is presented and used in a way that engages with the individuals within a team.
All right, so you go into an organisation, and you are the leader. You've been on the training. I would imagine, I'll ask you the question, is the process, first of all, to identify who you are?
Yes,
as a leader?
Very much so.
So you do your own personal profiling of who you are.
Yes.
And then what do you do with that information? Does that show you where your weaknesses or your abilities peter out a teeny bit?
Yes, yeah. Because as I said, I lead with what we call sunshine yellow, so it's extroverted feeling. And when I used to lead project teams, the first person I used to get on my team, knowing what style I was like, was my total behavioural opposite. And the reason being, I'd come a cropper. When I'd spoken about a project I was running once before in front of an audience, an internal audience, one of the people said, "Nick, great stuff that you've talked about. Could we see your project plan, please? Well, I hadn't actually written my project plan. It was in my head. It was ready to be written, but my style was actually to share that verbally. So the person who's got my total opposite behavioural style was somebody who loved writing, loved the plans, loved the detail, but not necessarily enjoy standing up and presenting about that project.
Is it difficult for an individual then to identify their own? Okay, you get the readings, you get the traits, and there is always this thing when you look at, shall we say, the horoscopes. Horoscopes you can make fit.
Yeah.
You know, it'll say you're going to have a bad day one day this week. You'll probably have a birthday this year. You know, you make it fit your circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the psychological profiling, is there a danger that you can kind of do that anyway?
Yes, I mean you can with anything, and you can with psychological profiling. However, a lot of them these days, if you are honest when you've completed the evaluators that produce the reports, they are very unique. They are not generalistic. They have specific statements that relate to you as an individual based on how you've completed the evaluators. One of the things that you can do is then, and I always do, is then test what I've come out, what I think my self-perception is, with colleagues, family and friends and my team members that know me well. I actually do a 360 to see whether...
So do you ask them to tell you what they think you're like?
Yes, yeah. And that can be quite revealing.
That can be quite painful, I would imagine.
It can be quite painful, yes, yeah. But it does give you some wonderful feedback. And it gives you feedback that you can play to your strengths and continue to do so. But it also gives you some wonderful feedback in terms of maybe your challenges, especially those things that you recognise hold you back in the way that you lead, and maybe what you need to do to actually overcome them.
Do you think that sometimes we have leaders who have got a particular personality trait? Let's go back to Steve Jobs again. The stories are legend about the way he was and the way he would manage his teams. Yeah, he got the very best out of them, and he was able to be extremely successful.
Yes.
Was it a case that he was a tier above all of this and they knew he was going to be slightly difficult, but everybody else was working within silos? But don't you sometimes see that kind of management style then percolates its way down, doesn't it?
Yes, in some organisations it does. People look to the leaders for the behaviours... For leadership, but also for the behaviours that they should exhibit themselves. And therefore, if you've got a leader that exhibits maybe some negative leadership styles, some staff will take it for granted that they can behave in that particular way. I think the great leaders, again, going back to Steve Jobs, yes, he knew what his leadership style was. However, he built a team around him that actually complemented that style. So that although he was the figurehead, and he was seen as the figurehead for Apple, it was a combination of him and his leadership team that actually drove that organisation forward. I haven't got any data on it, but I could probably hazard a guess that he got some very good, different people around him as part of his leadership team.
What makes a great leader, do you think?
Adaptability. Adaptability, which is being able to know and play to your strengths, building a team around you of people that complement your technical skills but also your behavioural style, and as a leader being able to pick up the traits of other people and understand where their differences lie and therefore how to motivate them, how to communicate with them, and how to utilise their wonderful skills most effectively.
What about tasks and the way we manage that, the relationships that we have, tasks and relationships?
Sure.
How can this help us in that particular area?
Well, I've noticed that, again, I think it goes back to the UK's engineering history and background, that a lot of the leadership and management training, we've got this sort of time lag, where is very much focused on task and doing things in a methodical way, whereas we've moved now to a service industry. So we've sort of turned things right on its head. However, some of the leadership styles are still based on those engineering days, and that's why a lot of organisations are still top heavy on focus on task. For instance, when I was working with an organisation the other day, I was working with the leadership team, and I said, when you come together as a leadership team, what do you talk about each week in your leadership meeting? And they talk about budgets, deadlines, targets, deliverables, and nobody mentioned that they talked about relationships and behaviours. And at the end of the day, it's only the strength of our relationships with other people that is actually going to make sure that we deliver on the tasks and the targets that have been set for us. So I've found that in the research that I've done with the model that I use, there's a lot of organisations that are spending too much time on task-related issues as opposed to dealing with relationships. And
but I would say that Steve Jobs, and we keep coming back to Steve Jobs, don't we, because I suppose he's, where he was in our psyche, but something like, relationships were of no importance to him.
Yeah.
He didn't, and you see senior management in large multinationals who will manage by fear nearly. So they don't care about relationships. They are task orientated and task driven.
Yeah.
And yet they're still getting the results. Are you saying that by changing that perception and coming back a bit, and not maybe managing in that particular way, but by working on the relationships, then they could be more effective?
I think it could be more effective.
I mean, they may look upon the confrontational kind of relationship as being the most effective relationship to have.
And there are some leaders that do that, yes, and they succeed, but quite often they don't succeed for a long period of time, because the research, certainly from the CIPD, says that of those people that leave an organisation, about 70% of them cite the reason for leaving that organisation as being a bad relationship with the boss. And that is where you get that situation that people will vote with their feet eventually when they say, in terms of somebody's leadership style, enough is enough. And they will then gravitate towards organisations that do value and appreciate relationships in balance with getting the task done.
You mentioned earlier on that as we get older, the way we approach things change, and of course we're of a very similar generation. And don't you feel that the older you get, you start getting to the stage where you think, I don't give a damn the way you can talk to me however you want, but I'm going to tell you the way it is. Yeah. You start to lose nearly that. Where if you're a young person starting off in industry, and you are told by someone to jump, you say how high. Yeah. By the time you get to our age and they say jump, you go jump yourself. Yeah. It all changes as we get older. Sure. Does that mean then that our colours are changing as well as we get older?
I think, yes, some people there's less adaptability and they say what you see is what you get. Yes, yeah. However, I think that those people in positions, certainly leadership positions in industry that do really well, whilst internally they might actually be saying that to themselves, up the game, and they do value and appreciate that value diversity, and do still continue to adapt. And over a period of time, actually adapting your style becomes part of who you are and part of your nature.
It's very interesting what's happening in the States at the moment. This is just to the side, I suppose. But what's happening, was it the mooch we've just had?
The mooch, yes.
Depending on when you're watching this, it all depends whether he's still employed or not. Donald Trump's brand new head of communications. I mean, 2 weeks down the stream, and it could be completely different over there now. Yeah. But the mooch, so a New Yorker, the quote I heard him say was, "Where I come from, we don't stab people in the back, we stab them in the front."
Yes.
And it's that kind of attitude, that kind of business relationship. it seems very, very immature to have somebody at that level in business and in world business, to be at that level, to be so pathetic and immature.
Certainly there's been significant changes in America after the elections, and you've started to see that come through in terms of the people that have been put into leadership positions by the president, and he's got a totally different style to his predecessor Barack Obama, who I believe was a wonderful communicator, in the fact that if you actually look at his speeches and you see clips of him, he does exactly the same as what I mentioned about earlier on. He's very adaptable, that he puts different elements into his speeches that he knows is going to hit the buttons of the different behavioural types. I think the president that we've got, the United States has got at the moment, has got a particular style of his own.
Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, does he have a style of his own at the moment. My guest on today's show in the studio is Nick Fewing, CEO of Engagement Works. So we've got more from Nick in just a few moments' time. Just a couple of things just to remind you of before we get into our last segment of the program. We're getting a lot of people picking up the phone, giving us a call, and talking to our own Linda Bazant about the future data protection regulations that are coming out, GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations. They're going to be coming into force in May of next year. A lot of people find out they're trying to find out how it's going to impact upon their business. If you are a business and at the moment you are collecting any form of contact information concerning maybe future prospects, future customers, if you have a database about your own employees, if you have any form of database, any form of data that you have captured from both online or within your organisation, you have to be very aware of this. I think there are a lot of people out there that are talking about the General Data Protection Regulations as a way for them to make money. I think the thing that you've actually got to step back for a moment and have a think about is GDPR. It's going to happen. It's a European directive. It doesn't matter whether we're leaving Europe or not. It's going to become part of British law. If you have any form of database for our customers or employees, you need to be aware of what your responsibilities are. Very simple things, right down to the right to be forgotten. So if somebody says, I want to be forgotten, they really mean it now. And the fines are very, very significant. The most interesting piece of information that Linda told me was, if you go to a networking event and someone gives you a business card, I would assume that when I'm given the business card, the people will go, well, thank you, I've got the business card now. That's given me the right to contact you, to market to you. And in fact, what the General Data Protection Regulation will mean to you and I when we go to a networking event, unless somebody has written on the back, maybe signed it, that actually gives permission for you to market to them, even though you have their business card, you could actually fall liable under the data protection regulations that are coming in. And they are saying now that this is from the Commission Office, the Data Regulation Commissioner's Office, that you have to sign the back of... Did you know this?
No,
sign the back of business cards. So if I give you my business card, I have to sign the back of it to give you permission to contact me. Frightening. Frightening. If you want more information, you want to find out more, if you want to have a word with our own Linda, she'll give you some advice. She's doing a number of talks on it, and she's also going into organisations and businesses and giving them some recommendations. She's not going into frighten, she's just going in to make you aware. Why don't you give her a call? You can contact us simply by giving us a ring on 01784 256 777, or you can go to our website at lindabazant.com. That's Linda Bazant, that's LINDABAZANT, strange old name, lindabazant.com, and you can find out more about how the General Data Protection Regulations can affect you. Comes into force May of next year. The fines are humongous. In fact, there was an article on the BBC website that said, will the General Data Protection Regulations bankrupt companies? I know. That's what I thought when I read it. And if you look at the amount of the fines, for a small organisation to be hit by a fine from the over GDPR, it could shut the organisation down. The other thing that's interesting as well is that up until now, when you go to the Data Commissioner's regulation site and you sign up because you've got a database, you pay a fee. for that. Well, they won't be making their money from the fees anymore. They will be making their money from the fines. So it's in their interest now to go out and to get ya. So be aware of that, won't you? You're watching Business Connections Live. Joining me in the studio today is Nick Fewings. He's the CEO of Engagement Works. Lovely to have you with. We're into the last segment now. We're going to, let's just very quickly have a quick gander at your website if we can, Nick. This is Engagements. And I'll just go to the home page. There's the home page coming up right now. Great site, loads of great information sitting on there. Here it comes any second now. We like fast loading sites. And come on, you can do it. It's just still loading.
No, you need to scroll up.
There we go. There we are. So specialists in helping create high-performing teams, engaging individuals, motivating teams, helping them transform and achieve even greater success. Everything you need to know about what Nick can do. As I said, he's a public speaker. He can also come into your organisation and do one-to-one training with your particular teams. There's a number of testimonials on there. He does conference speaking as well. But this is all about changing your business and getting more out of your team members. All right, then let's get back to the nitty-gritty. The most important element of high performance that the team must all know. What is the most important element?
Why the team exists. A lot of books that I've read will say that the most important thing that you need to get right in a team is trust, to build trust. But I disagree, and I believe...
Good for you.
Yes, yeah. The reason being, I had a very close friend, business colleague, and they asked me to join their team. And I said to them, the first thing I said was, great, can you tell me why your team exists? What's it there to do? And when they told me, actually it didn't motivate or inspire me. So although I trusted that individual, I actually said, no thanks, appreciate you asking me, but no, I'd rather not. So that's why I believe purpose is the really key thing. And a lot of organisations, a lot of teams, again, are struggling with this in the big data that I've collected from my team dynamics model. Purpose, out of the 16 elements that you need to manage effectively, actually only came in at number 8. And I will give you an example. I was working with a leadership team. I won't say which one. But I went into them and there were 10 of them in the team, and I just said, okay, you are a team. And they said, yes, we're the senior leadership team. And I said, okay, think of me as a new member of your team. I've come into your team today. And I gave them a piece of paper each, and I said, please write down why your team exists so that I understand. And no surprises, when I got them to read out what they put down, there were 10 different replies. And I said, well, that's going to cause me confusion.
So whose fault is that? Is that the leader of the leadership team's fault?
Well, in that situation, I think it was a collective. And again, with teams where, and I've seen that happen on a number of occasions, they all think their purpose is something slightly different. It's a collective, and this is why I use the team dynamics model with teams, because it holds a mirror up to their faces to the things that they're doing as a team that are really working well, and the things that they're struggling with that they need to change. And you talked about Derek Williams and the WOW Awards and employee engagement earlier on. And I believe that team engagement actually complements employee engagement, but it's at more of a grassroots level. A lot of employee engagement surveys, they talk about corporate actions in terms of engagement, and the things that people keep people awake in a team on a Sunday night is thinking, oh my goodness, I have to go in on Monday and I have to work with Frank or Jane, and we've got bad relationships and the team isn't working well. Those are the things where people struggle with. And as I mentioned, purpose is the one that you need to nail. Why does your team exist? So when I go in with teams, the first thing we do is we explore that and make sure everybody understands the reasons. So they actually, if they don't understand it already, they actually construct a team purpose statement, which it's very simple. You should be able to tell somebody in an elevator why your team exists. And there's three elements. It exists to do something, whatever that something is. That enables certain things to happen, which then benefits certain things. So our team exists to do X, Y, and Z, which enables A, B, and C, and the benefits are 1, 2, 3.
I tell you what, there are a lot of teams out there, I would imagine, at the moment that probably don't really know why they exist. They know they have to be somewhere, maybe on a Monday morning at 9 o'clock for a meeting, but why?
I often tell the anecdote when I speak at conferences about John F. Kennedy going to, he went to NASA to have a look round, and whilst he was there was a guy a janitor, and he was sweeping the floor. And John F. Kennedy went up and said, "I'm John F. Kennedy, President of the United States. Can I ask, what are you doing?" And the janitor turned to him and he said, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." Now that janitor knew his team's purpose because he knew that bigger picture. So it wasn't a fact that his purpose was to sweep the floor. His purpose was to help put a man on the moon by making sure that there was no dust that got into the moon capsules and the land.
What a great story.
Yeah.
I wonder if that would happen today. Why are you here? What's it to do with you? It's been a real insight. I mean, time has really beaten us, and I feel that we could truly talk for hours about this whole area. We always invite our guests to look straight down the camera lens at the end and to give the key takeaways about what we should be thinking about when we're finished watching and listening to this particular programme. So we invite you to do that. Okay. Say who you are and where you're from. The airwaves are all yours. It's straight down camera number 4, that one there. So, whenever you're ready, who you are, where you're from, and what those key takeaways are and why we should remember listening to you from today. So it's up to you.
Okay, my name's Nick Fewings. I'm CEO of Engagement Works, and the takeaways from today's session are you need to, if you are going to build a high-performing team, there's 2 things that you need to focus on. The first thing is the who. Who have you got in your team? Not only in terms of their technical skills, but you also need to know who you've got in your team from a behavioural perspective. And the second thing, which a lot of teams don't know or understand, is how do those individuals work effectively together as a team? And it's really important that you find a measurement tool, because if you can't measure something, you can't manage it and make it better and more effective. So those are the 2 takeaways from today's session. Who is in your team and how do they work effectively together?
Nick, thanks very much indeed. You touched on the whole measurement thing there. Can you give us just some very quick advice on the kind of ways that you can measure whether a team is working together and how successful it's working together?
Sure. Well, with my experience, I've identified 16 elements that you need to manage and you need to measure that makes up an effective team.
I can't wait. Far away with all 16 if you don't mind. Thank you.
Well, we've already touched on purpose, and it links into the behavioural model that we talked about. So you've got purpose is a fiery red thing because it's strategic, it's action oriented. Vision is another one that is fiery red. If we move on, I won't go through all the 16 because we haven't got time. But in terms of the sunshine yellow, the key elements there are collaboration, communication. With the earth green, there's an element that's trust. Because the earth green is about emotional relationships. Also diversity is another element that's in that emotional relationship category. And what I call framework mapping, which is the cool blue, there's an element about processes. Do we have the appropriate processes that work for our team and don't hinder us in what we do? And also understanding roles and skills. So do we know who is good at doing what? So there's a couple from each of the 4 elements.
Well, I tell you what, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you today. I don't know about you, I found it, I suppose, the whole area of leadership within organisations, we've all been, I suppose, the victims maybe at times, of the kind of the leaders that don't have the ability to be a true leader and are just there because they've been promoted to their level of incompetence. Yes. We've all worked for those kind of people, but I hope today it's given you a bit of an insight. If it's allowed you, if for no other reason, just to identify what kind of leader you are and who you are surrounding yourselves with within your organisation, and how perhaps maybe you can get more out of that circle of people who are surrounding you, then the whole show hasn't gone to waste. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. My thanks to Nick Fewing, CEO of Engagement Works. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Hope you've enjoyed today's program. Right, just a little bit of housekeeping before we do walk out the door today. Coming up on next week's program, we've got Fluid Business Coaching with a lovely man called Hugo. I'm looking forward to seeing him. He's a great bloke. He's from Holland. We get a lot of Dutch people on the program, you know. He'll be our second. He's coming up on the program next week. Future programs include Jackie Jarvis, Business Clarity Coach, Jeremy Nichols, Director of Talking Toolbox, Speaker and Coach. Angie Phillips is going to be joining us as well, the Design Angel, and Jerry Brown will be on the program, the Customer Lifeguard. But that wraps up today's show. Listen, I hope you've enjoyed today's program. Hope you found it useful. Once again, my thanks to Nick Fewings, CEO of Engagements. But from all the team here at Business Connections Live, thank you very much indeed for watching. Don't forget, we're live again next Monday at 12 noon. But until then, have a great week. Bye for now. Thanks for watching.